When?
I'm sorry.
No,
That
you're
is
good.
tonight. Yes, that's tonight at Rudyard's, 8 o'clock. And tomorrow the Cops are playing.
The
The
cops.
Cops.
I,
Yes, Cops, Toxic Origin, The Stuff, and Ugly Studs. And it looks like that's a birthday party that's at a house. So
I think that's some great songs.
you can look that up. I would follow the Cops on social
We
media
need
and
to
see
play
what's
more
going on.
cops. I love their song "Working for the City."
Yeah, I feel like we're working for the city right now.
Well,
And
we want to go ahead.
last one is Sunday night. El Jumbotron, Brannigan, and Greg Coat, or I'm sorry, I forgot his name, but that's going to be at the new venue Red Dwarf, and I'm really excited to check that venue out for the first time. I've been seeing a lot of cool shows. It seems like an indie vibe, more of like an indie kind of music out there. But yeah, full weekend of shows, pretty much all the venues. I think there's something at Darwin's tonight as well.
Sweet. Well, lots of things going on. Of course, we'll post some of these events. If you follow us on Facebook at the Freethinker Radio page, we'll check that out. And we want to remind you guys, you don't have to depend on Facebook anymore. We do have thehoustonfreethinkers.com is a place where you can find the archives. You can learn a little bit about the history of this show and the history of the Houston Freethinkers if you're into that. And just want to let our potential listeners, viewers know we are live now on youtube.com/conscious resistance. So you can listen live. You can also watch us in the studio. And as Micah said earlier, we're working on the technology aspect, so we're just really trying to make this a multimedia,
Simulcast on
truly
everything.
like interactive show. And we've got some exciting things coming up. In addition to the giveaways we're doing, lots of interesting guests. I'm gonna just I had a
We're
local
giving
story.
Derek away.
Oh, you're giving me away for a week.
I'm just joking.
um, I was gonna cover a local story about 5G, but I think I'll save that for a little bit and maybe even next week if we don't have time. But let's go ahead, Johnny. Let's pull up that interview if you've got it. This is the interview I did with.
Hang on, I don't have that
Well,
one
go
Is
ahead
there
and
any
pull that up.
framing of it?
Yeah. So for those again who are watching on YouTube, you can actually see the articles and see some of the things we're talking about. But I'll tell you a little bit about it. This is a recently announced study, and they're actually looking for they're still looking for people to be a part of it. So if you're interested in if
So
you
you have to
if you
take
have
psilocybin to be part
treatment
of it?
resistant depression, have been clinically diagnosed, and you're interested in trying something else, psilocybin is now being used in this study, and I will let the interview explain most of it, but I will say it's being performed by the University of Texas Health Science Center at Houston, which is also known as UT Health. And the lead doctor, Dr. Selvaraj, I talked to him earlier today. We pre-recorded this short little 10, 11-minute interview that you're about to hear, where he goes into some of the details. And, this is, to me, it's interesting because, Mike, I don't know if you noticed, but there's been about 4 different cities in the U.S. that have already decriminalized magic mushrooms, psilocybin, as well as other substances, and some just for decriminalization, whether you want to use it recreationally, medicinally, what have you. But others who are looking at it from the study perspective. A couple of years ago, I actually did an article. I went out and met some of the researchers who are into this from the Imperial College of London as well as Johns Hopkins University, and they've studied psilocybin uh, for trying to see how it affects people's lives in the long term when they have what they call mystical experiences or profound life-changing experiences. They've studied it for nicotine addiction and found positive evidence that it does help. It can be helpful for people to quit nicotine, and they're also studying it in relation to anxiety, depression, and PTSD. So this latest study is related to depression, and we're going to go to that right now. Stay tuned. You're listening to Freethinker Radio.
Welcome back to Freethinker Radio. For those who've been following our show for a while, you know that a variety of stories related to health, related to mental health, as well as the changing landscape in the United States related to the drug war. And one of these stories relates to psilocybin mushrooms. Psilocybin, of course, is the active ingredient in what many people refer to as "quote unquote" magic mushrooms. But it's a topic that I've been researching for a number of years. A couple of years back, I went to the Horizons conference in New York City, and I was able to interview the folks from Imperial College of London who have previously done studies on psilocybin treating anxiety, depression, as well as PTSD. Roland Griffiths of Johns Hopkins University back in 2014, he also started to do some studies on psilocybin. So this is something that's been increasing in recent years, and of course the FDA has approved psilocybin research breakthrough therapies. We're going to hear more about that today. We're generally trying to look at what does this mean for the future going forward to treat mental health, as well as we have at least 4 different cities in the United States taking steps to decriminalize psilocybin as a medicine and treating people in this way. And it's an interesting time to be alive. And so today we're going to talk to one of the main researchers, I believe, involved in the current study taking place at the University of Texas Health Science Center here in Houston, also known as UT Health. We're talking with Dr. Selvaraj. How are you doing today?
Very well. Thank you for inviting us, and happy to be with you.
Yeah, we appreciate your time. I know you obviously are working on some important things at the moment. Let's go ahead and get right into it. If you could just tell our audience a little bit about the current study that you guys are, I mean, I don't know if you've already started or if you're still looking for participants, but give us a little bit of background on what you guys are focused on at UT Health.
Our study, the principal investigator here at Jair Soares is the chairman of the department, and I are also part of the study. This is a multi-site clinical trial run by a company called Compass Pathways. We are one of the centers of this multi-site, multi-country trial, looking into psilocybin or psilocybin, a compound that has been shown to help with depression symptoms in people suffering from a resistant form of depression. That is, people who had treatment with medications, antidepressants, and therapy, but not responded to those treatments. And we are recruiting such individuals with resistant depression for this trial that involves therapy assisted with psilocybin. What it actually means is that the patients who take part in this study will go through a screening interview to see whether they are suitable for this study. Then they are carefully screened, and then they go through therapy assessments by a very well-trained therapist who prepares them for the study. After that part, and then they receive the psilocybin at different doses, 1 milligrams or 10 milligrams or 25 milligrams, and to see the effect of the psilocybin on to the depression symptoms. And the therapist part is very, very important here. We are not just looking at a medication effect. We're looking into how therapy can be used along with the medication and see how we can improve the symptoms with these patients.
Okay, great. So you said how how psilocybin compared to traditional treatment. Would that include, for example, like antidepressants? Is this comparing the two?
In this study, we are only looking at the effect of the psilocybin at different doses, 25 milligrams, 10 milligrams, and 1 milligrams, which is the lowest dose. So we're not comparing with any compound or any other drug treatment on this study.
Got you. Okay. And so did you say that you are, I read in the press release that you guys were looking for, obviously you said folks who have been diagnosed with treatment-resistant depression between the ages of 18 to 55. Is this something that you're still accepting participants?
That's right. That's correct. And we are still recruiting participants for this study, yes.
Okay, and so I mentioned a couple of as I talked about, I mentioned the Imperial College of London study, which also looked at treating anxiety. It did include depression, and I was able to talk with one of the researchers from over there. Can you tell us a little bit about the differences in past studies and compared to what you guys are looking for? Obviously, you said you're not comparing to, how does psilocybin compare to antidepressants? But how does this compare, I guess, to past studies?
This is a good question. We are part of the same team that, from Imperial College London. We're all centers involved in this multi-site trial run by this Compass Pathways. So in the first initial study from the Imperial College London, where they looked into the effect of psilocybin in patients with depression, that was what we call as an open label study. That is, patients know what they are getting, and the researcher also know what the patients are going to get. So it's a kind of not blinded. So the initial pilot study, that study showed positive findings that psilocybin helped depression symptoms in those patients. So this study is to do it in a much more objective, like patients would not know which dose of psilocybin they are getting. On also, this is a therapy-assisted treatment. Therefore, patients go with the therapist with preparatory sessions with the therapist, and then on the day of the psilocybin, they stay in the in a room that is decorated, renovated in such a way that it's a suitable, very conducive atmosphere for the patients, and they sit with the therapist, and therapists guide them through the experience after taking the psilocybin. That's very important. And after that session day, they also come back to see the therapist for a few more sessions, so they kind of understand the experience and restructure that experience and able to process their emotional experience better. So that's the whole point of this study, and it's done in a more comprehensive, blinded way, so patients would not know which dose they are getting. Also, the therapist and the researcher will not know. And then it is a long-term study. Well, we were looking at a few months, during this trial. So it's a comprehensive, multi-site study that will tell us whether psilocybin is actually effective in treatment-resistant depression or not.
Okay, I appreciate that. And for those who are listening and watching, we're going to be playing this both on radio as well as on video. We're showing a picture on the screen of the room, which has a picture of you, doctor, and the room that I guess you're doing the trials in. And I've seen some of the other studies. So when you're describing folks are coming into this room, they'll have the day of their dose. Is this going to be like some in the past where they have where they're maybe wearing a blindfold or something like that, and just there's a somebody like you there to listen to them as they go through the experience?
Yes, I think a trained psychology professor and therapist is also involved in the study. Dr. Thomas Mayer is going to be the main therapist who will be with the patient during the session. And the patient are going to lie down, sleep, or sit, or talk about the experience, whatever. And the therapist helps the patient process this experience, and that's the key.
Absolutely. And final question here, just like you said, you're able to kind of compare this in more of a blind way, where the patients aren't sure what exactly, if they're going to get a dose or not. What do you think this can tell us about the future of treating depression? I mean, I know we're not here to speculate and just to stick to the study, but is there something that from here, for example, if we get positive results, do we move on to the next phase of continuing this research? Where does it go from here?
Well, that's a very good question. We know that many of the patients who are suffering from depression do not respond to regular treatments, medications, and other treatments well. So many actually have continuous symptoms. They have persistent symptoms for a longer period and struggle to get back to their life, work, and relationship and all that. So what we found out from clinical experience as well as in research is that sometimes therapy can be very helpful even during medication or other treatment. So integrating both in a way so patients able to understand and process emotional experiences better. I think that's the way forward. And if this research proves that that's going to be useful in the future treatment, and that will change the way we kind of treat patients with depression as well.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to talk to us today. If we do have listeners, because we're broadcasting all around the greater Houston area, if any of our listeners are interested in reaching out to either learn more or perhaps they might want to see if they can participate in the trial, where could they get in touch with your team?
UT Health Psychiatry, and I can give you the phone number, which is 713-486-2627. I'll repeat it, 486-2627. UT Health Psychiatry.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. We really do appreciate it. Everyone, you've been listening to Freethinker Radio here as we talk with Dr. Selvraj of UT Health. They're conducting new clinical trials on treating resistant depression, treatment-resistant depression with psilocybin. So please check that out. And if you are interested in getting involved, reach out to them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
All right, welcome back to Freethinker Radio.
All right, that was an awesome little interview. We're going to get right into some music for you guys. We have a new release from a Houston band called Kim Jong Uno. This song is called Sorry to Bother You.
Is it quality because my bad decisions, or is it caused by broken systems, broken promises, and broken peace? The reinforce the class of victims. This thing's not real, but the breaker's full. It's barrel torn, the vulnerable. The questions could ask you prompted. Secret means to wage a war. Is it poverty because my bad decisions, or is it built by politics? Kept in place by you and me. Still more those who will not see. Color, class, and race, and creed. All those means of unity. So be out. System people better off. I asked life for God around what's well as it's outrage. What's the better regular? What's the back? No substitution. Classic agitation. Sorry not coming across like a lyrical power. Just stand on you on with the system tic-tac.
Okay, so you want to go into we've got which one is everything else?
Oh, yeah. Figure that out.
You want to do a cutter rush? No?
Yeah, might as well.
You can get these.
There's a little bit. They were indicted, Yeah. And that guy who was walking up to the other ones was trying to give him a car wash. Trying to wash the car. So I was mixing those two. Your local police station. All right. Love the music. Love the music. Hope everybody's having a good time. I see a lot of people out there in the live stream. I'm going to go ahead and take a couple of comments. Somebody here said their shrink fell asleep once on them, and they were pouring their heart out, and they heard them snoring. Well, therapist, the rapist, right? I mean, let's see what else. Oh, goodness. Yep, better than fluoride. You can microdose on your own pretty easy. That's what they say, at least here in the comments. I do love getting all these comments on the live stream. I think that's one of my favorite aspects about the live stream because I really don't like seeing myself so much. But hey, and sharing the images of the bands and the news articles and hey there and all that stuff is fun too. So I think we're going to get into a little bit of local. Are you ready for that, Derek?
Yeah, let's do it. I know we got some local police state stuff, unfortunately.
Yeah, we do. And I guess it's good that the word's getting out. I mean, if you want to try to see things on a positive side of it. It turns out that former Houston police officers, and this is related to the Tuttle raid, which we've been covering for a year now, we're finally getting somewhere in the legal system over a year later. A grand jury has indicted Gerald Goins for felony murder and tampering with a government document. Bryant has been indicted for tampering with a government document. I know we covered this one a lot, but there's a lot of stuff coming out of it. And I think the main thing is if you're not in Houston, maybe you're concerned about the police state. But I think beyond that, one of the things is this is kind of, I don't know how to put it, a pattern, right? So, maybe you recognize a pattern in your area that's similar, So anyway, former Houston police officers were indicted on this. They call it a botched drug raid, as if it was ever really a drug raid, I mean, it was speculated that there were drugs there, and the drugs that they claimed were there weren't there, except in, I think maybe some of them were in Officer Goins' car. Turns out that a grand jury has indicted Goins for felony murder and Bryant for government messing with the government document. Our Harris County DA, Kim Ogg, said her office is focused on finding justice for the victims, Rosina Nicholas and Dennis Tuttle, and for Houston residents whose trust was betrayed by these officers. I don't know. What do y'all think about that? You know, that Kim Ogg is saying that she's not just seeking justice for the victims here, the people who were executed, but also for the residents here because their trust was betrayed by these officers. I think maybe it was more than that. I think everything that came in the aftermath of it continued to maybe, uh, I guess, betray trust or at least weaken the public's trust. And I think that's kind of sad because if we're going to have people be officers to stop murders, rapes, and all these violent crimes against people, we need to have a little trust in them. But it's hard to have any trust in them when they do things like that and then jump up and say, don't talk about it. Federal prosecutors said Goins lied on multiple search warrant applications, was nowhere near Harding Street the day before the raid, and had an ongoing sexual relationship with a confidential informant. You could say, wow, what a bad officer. Well, you know, he was around for a long time, and they would claim he was a model officer and sent the new recruits over to learn the ropes from him. Goins' attorney said prosecutors don't have a shred of evidence to support a conclusion that Mr. Goins is either a flight risk or a danger to the community. I don't know. Killing people is pretty dangerous. Having illegal drugs and stolen guns in your car is pretty dangerous.
Yeah, stealing people's drugs is dangerous.
Yeah, you could get shot that way, or you could, hurt them. What if they need their drugs? Turns out that Goins is dealing with medical issues because he was involved in a raid that was fraudulent, went in, and the people that he kicked in the door for, they were armed. They were armed Americans, and I guess they didn't like someone just coming in, so they fought back. They're dead now, but if they hadn't fought back, we might not even know anything about this. And that's the real truth and the real takeaway here. And I hate to say it because I don't want anybody to be shot or hurt.
And I want to just add to this, Micah. As you said, we've been covering this for, well, almost a year because the anniversary of the Tuttle shooting is coming up, not this coming Monday,
January
but the following
28th.
Monday. So just to kind of tune in next week, sort of preview, we're going to be having former guests from We the People, Huai and Kathy, Kathy's a former police officer here in the city of Houston. Both of them were involved in organizing the group that they call We the People, which was focused on the Tuttle raid, focused on no-knock raids. So they're going to come back in the studio next week to give us an update on a lot of the kind of goings on, and they're also going to talk about a planned action for the 1-year anniversary, just so you know.
In the days after the deadly 28th raid, Goins named 2 different informants as the Harding Street buyer. 2 different ones. And this is kind of something we've seen in the Otis Mallet case, too. There was no other buyer. After they and 3 other of Goins' other informants denied involvement, Goins claimed that he made the buy himself on January 27th. And one thing I'll say about this, him making the buy himself, there's all kinds of problems with that. And you can see this in the Otis Mallet case where he arrested Otis Mallet and he was the only buyer. He was the only one to claim anything about the drugs. And there's all kinds of problems. And I wish we had more time to get into the Otis Mallet situation. But now that I see that also in the Tuttles, he was the only buyer. So you just have him, this officer, who's already got a history of this stuff. And it turns out, here's what he said. After it was proven that he didn't use any informants, he basically wrote a note that said that I screwed up because I made a buy without the correct manpower out there. Well, he'd done that before. But Goins was nowhere near that location on that date. So, okay, then what? Check it out. There was no confidential informant. There was no buy. He claims to have made the buy, but he was nowhere near the location. It just gets thicker and deeper. Goins and Bryant were arrested November 20th. Patricia Ann Garcia, who was a 911 caller, was also arrested in connection to the raid. So you people out there that say, "Oh, I'm just going to call and get someone in trouble,"
Red flag laws.
Yeah, don't be surprised when that backfires on you if you just make up stuff about people or do some hearsay stuff.
In this case, 2 people and their dog are dead.
Yep. And a lot of officers are hurt because I imagine Stephen Bryant and Gerald Goins, we know, were corrupt. But I'm sure they were in a position of power and authority and led younger officers into this war zone.
Well, like you said, they uphold him as a model police officer.
And you know how it is when you start a new job, you listen to the people that have been there. I mean, you just want to do your job. I imagine these officers were, the junior ones probably really believed there was black tar heroin and guns and all the stuff that Goins claimed. So they were afraid for their lives when they went in there, and then they had to start shooting people that were innocent, and poor junior officers. Turns out that I'm going to hurry up and get through this. After Garcia Harding Street neighbor made the alleged false 911 call about Tuttles and Nicholas, the tip was passed on to the narcotics division, but Goins appeared to have conducted no follow-up investigation before asking for a search warrant. So no investigation. Goins claimed that 2 baggies of heroin were found in his city-issued vehicle were from Harding Street. But those bags were from another drug buy a week earlier. See, he's got so many drug buys, he's confused with
Can't
them.
even keep them straight.
Yeah. And on a search warrant, he claimed to have watched his informant buy crack cocaine, not heroin, on Napoleon Street, but he wasn't with all the information when she made the buy. He abandoned executing that search warrant because SWAT was called to another call. Seems like he's got a number of these type of cases. Since the discovery of the lies contained in the defendant's affidavit for the search warrant for the Napoleon Street address, investigators have discovered several other search warrants where it appears that the defendant has lied about confidential informants and controlled drug buys. So it's a pattern. And one other pattern that's been revealed is the fact that he also claimed that there were illegal weapons in every single raid, yet never were any illegal weapons recovered. Court records also claim that Goins violated multiple police department narcotic procedures by not tagging the evidence. Heroin, crack cocaine, ecstasy, marijuana, stolen guns, these were all found in his vehicle.
Just typical police gear.
Yeah. He also met alone. If he hadn't been shot, I'm sure some of that stuff would have been, dispersed and cleaned up, and the narrative would be a little different. He also met alone with confidential informants and maintained a sexual relationship with one of his informants for multiple years. Maintaining a sexual relationship with an informant is a major violation of policies and demonstrates the defendant's willingness to flout rules and take advantage of opportunities unique to an officer. And see, this is what we're finding constantly, right? One rule for the rulers, one for everyone else. And this is the problem. We need the police to be held to a higher standard because, they're the ones who are walking around saying what the rules are to people. So he basically did everything for his own benefit, it turns out. So, there's a lot more we can get into about this, but I think that's enough of an update. The other day, there was another shooting where the police shot an individual who was, coming up to their car, shot through the window, and it turns out that now that individual was saying he was going to offer them a car wash. We've seen that around here. I've actually had someone ask if they could wash my car while I was here on location. I think it's probably similar to the people that want to wash your window, only they've got resources. So that's really sad. Yeah. So I'm going to
Yeah,
pull that one up.
definitely a story that we're going to keep our eye on. And as we said just a moment ago, we're going to have some guests on next week who will be talking about local efforts to, besides we're talking about here on the show, there are folks getting out into the streets, getting out into the neighborhoods, trying to keep attention on these stories as they happen.
I think it's important. I mean, there's got to be a standard. Otherwise, you see stuff like you see with Goins. And, I don't think that's very fair. The one thing I was going to mention is that Houston police say an undercover officer last week shot this Keith Martin through the windshield of an unmarked pickup. So it wasn't a marked car, just like the way they kicked in the doors over at the Tuttles. They weren't wearing uniforms. The man threatened the officer and appeared to reach for a gun in his backpack, is what they say. But there was no gun in the man's backpack. Martin, 45, survived the shooting, thank goodness, and has since been charged with misdemeanor terroristic threat. His backpack did not contain a gun, but rather his car detailing equipment and his cell phone. In the statement, Evans said the shooting was unjustified and that the officer's actions displayed racial bias. Martin, who is black, remains in the Harris County Jail in lieu of a $2,000 bond. The undercover officer has not been identified due to the nature of the officer's assignment. Mr. Martin was simply trying to earn a living when he was met by several bullets. That's what his attorney says. And this another thing in January, right? 2 plainclothes undercover officers were conducting surveillance in unmarked Chevy Silverado, Walgreens parking lot, 8,000 block of Martin Luther King Boulevard. Martin unwittingly interrupted their operation around 1:20 p.m. It's not even the middle of the night. Police said he walked around the truck and looked inside. He gestured for the officers to get out, and at one point struck the hood of the truck with his hands, police said. Martin struck the hood. Martin tried to open the driver's side door and claimed he had something for the officers. Police described Martin as incredibly angry and agitated. The pickup doors were locked, and the officers wouldn't exit the vehicle. So, I mean, this is a little weird, right? Said he had something in his backpack for the officers. Walked to the front of the truck, removed his backpack, he stuck his hand inside, and raised the bag in a manner that looked like he had a gun in it. That's according to the officers. You know, that's a subjective thing, right? And that's when they decided to shoot him. So.
I think we got a caller who wants to talk a little bit about the cop situation. Who do we got on the line with us?
Hello, you mentioned a few minutes ago, you referred to the junior officers as poor junior officers. And that brings to mind, do you remember back when New York Mayor de Blasio was first inaugurated?
And this is the context I would say, is that these things don't happen without people being involved in covering up in some way. People's prison videos, jail videos don't just disappear overnight without somebody making that happen one way or the other. So it's important
It's
to
not
look
part
at
of the
that.
program?
It could be part of the program, but it's definitely not supposed to happen. Let's say that, right?
Gotcha.
So this one is coming. Recent reports, actually, I think it was originally reported by the New York Times and it spread elsewhere, that a lawsuit by the Virgin Islands Attorney General shows that Epstein was actually still trafficking girls as young as 11 as recent as 2018. Most of the reports focus on 2015 and show that, no, focus on 2005, excuse me, and 2008. And most people believe after 2008, that was it. Epstein stopped doing his activities. But reports are indicating otherwise, and the AG of the attorney of Virgin Islands is basically saying that they filed a lawsuit to try to get to the details of this. Now, unfortunately, since Epstein is quote unquote dead, we used air quotes right there, the lawsuits against him have all but been dropped, and there's the only hope for real justice is to go after the co-conspirators, the people who helped this cover-up take place. So that's where the efforts have been focusing on. But with this new lawsuit, they're basically trying to go after some other folks who were involved, and they're trying to hold someone accountable because people, Epstein, Micah, was a rich guy. He had people who worked in his house. He had people who drove him around. He had people who would be witness to his activities and would know what he was up to. And these are not the things that were being shown that people are hearing from.
Friends with Clinton and Trump?
He was friends with Clinton. He was friends with Trump. There was actually recent pictures that came out and showing him and Clinton spending quite a bit of time together. But this this news story comes out saying that the Virgin Islands AG is going to file a lawsuit trying to hold some people accountable. Girls as young as 11 and 12 were brought to his private estate in the Virgin Islands known as Little St. James, or simply Pedo Island, where former President Bill Clinton and others vacationed. So Epstein apparently kept a computerized database to track the availability and movements of his victims. So he knew where they were at. And there's even reports that one of the victims tried to swim off the island to get away, and she couldn't get anywhere, and they came and kind of rounded her back up. The lawsuit seeks the forfeiture of Little St. James as well as Great St. James, which was the island that Epstein had purchased, as well as several shell companies he established in the territory, which were alleged fronts for his sex trafficking. So, that's another update. And then the other one relates to Prince Andrew, the UK's Prince Andrew. We just had a report in the last couple of days that UK police, Scotland Yard, the famous Scotland Yard, are refusing to turn over information that could indicate whether or not Prince Andrew has been lying about whether he knew Virginia Giuffre, who is one of the young victims, now a grown woman, who was trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein, and as she said, she was his sex slave. So Prince Andrew claims he never met this person, even though there's a picture. For those who are watching on screen, there's a picture of the two of them together. He claims, oh, that was Photoshop. That's not real. That wasn't me. That couldn't possibly be me because I was somewhere else at that point. Well, again, being a high-profile person, being somebody who is involved with royalty and having private security, he would have records. He would have records of where he was on the night in question. All we have to do is reveal those records. But unfortunately, Scotland Yard says they will not be releasing any of those records because guess why, Micah? It could harm national security.
Yeah.
So knowing the truth about where Prince Andrew was in relation to Jeffrey Epstein could harm national security.
Harm somebody's job.
Could definitely harm someone's job for sure, I would say. So just a little bit of understanding that this story continues to go on. Epstein may be allegedly dead. That's what people say. We're not going to get into that. Did he kill himself? Was he murdered? Is he still alive? You figure it out on your own. All we know is that the cases are some of them have hit a dead end, and attempts to go after other co-conspirators, potentially Prince Andrew, potentially Donald Trump, potentially Bill Clinton, other key players. So far, we haven't seen any movement on those, and it's been 7-8 months. And, it's really disturbing to see that going on. So unfortunately, we're not going to get any immediate justice when it comes to Epstein at the moment, but we will keep our eyes and ears on that story. One other one I want to just briefly mention, I didn't get to touch on earlier, and this is a local story, but it relates to international, because wherever you're listening to or listening from or watching from, 5G is being rolled out in your area. You could be in the small backwoods of Australia, and they're pushing it in Australia. They're pushing it in Sweden, pushing it in Switzerland. And so two things. First, there are several lawsuits going on right now between cities around the country. Unfortunately, Houston's not one of them because we have a mayor who's a 5G Wireless Champion Award and who supports Verizon and Sprint and won't answer any questions about the concerns about 5G. But there are cities who have sued the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, which is the same organization that regulates these airwaves and prevents us from saying certain words, lest we harm your ears. So these lawsuits could potentially stop the 5G rollout, but analysts say it looks like the FCC is going to win. This case will go before the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit on February 10th. And the FCC is, of course, trying to speed up the rollout. The cities are trying to slow it down. And this comes after Donald Trump issued an executive order, which basically, think about this corporatism, statism, Micah. You as a city, you only have 90 days to approve this. You can't charge more than we say you can. You can't decide where it goes. We'll turn it into a palm tree for you if you don't like it. Something like that, right? So those lawsuits are going on. Meanwhile, a couple of weeks ago, for those who've been listening, you know, I was on Fox 26 with Isaiah Carey talking about the local fight. There are residents of 3rd Ward here in Houston who are trying to push back against the tower, which is literally going to be 35 feet outside of somebody's bedroom window. 35 feet. And there's fights going on in Tanglewood. So you have the kind of lower income neighborhoods, you have the more wealthy neighborhoods pushing back against it. And I just want to let anybody know who might be interested. There is a tower commission, which I had never heard of. It's under the Houston Planning and Development. They meet the 3rd or the 4th Monday at 3:30 p.m. downtown. And Micah, talk about unelected people. Like, I've never even heard any of these people. There's no emails for them. There's no names. But there's 6 different tower commission members and a secretary who meet every month. And if you have a complaint about a tower, cell tower, small cell, this is where you would go to. It's a 7-member board. Considers requests for waivers, appeals on disapproved towers, and
Do you
appeals.
know any people with complaints about towers?
I do, and so this is what I want you guys to know. We have not this coming Monday, 3 days from today, 2 days from today, but the following Monday. We'll remind you again next week. This is going to be a good action, though. We talked about next Saturday is the global protest against 5G. 2 days after that, you can go to the Tower Commission. You can express your discontent with this. Just again, they say that they consider requests for waivers, appeals on disapproved towers, and appeals from affected property owners, associations, or groups on tower permit applications. If you're a property owner, if you're an association or a group, or you have an appeal, you want to appeal one of the towers in your area, this is where you go to. These are the people that you need to get involved with. I'd never heard of them until recently, and my guess is they're not very public for maybe a reason. But I plan to go there on their meeting the 4th Monday of this month, if anybody wants to get involved on that on the local level, and we will definitely keep our eyes and ears on that. But that's all I got for today, Michael.
Well, I guess I can cover a little bit.
Patient callers.
Patient callers?
Ooh, let's do
Let's
that.
get to the callers.
Hello, you still there, caller? Richard? Mr. Richard?
Yes.
You're
Thank
on
you
the
so
air.
much. Appreciate you taking my call. Look, I don't want to beat this story to death, but I wanted to go more on the corruption in Houston by the authorities. I know firsthand this is not the exception to the rule. This is not an aberration. It happens all the time with the Harris County Deputy Sheriff's Organization. The Harris County Deputy Sheriff's. It happens with the Houston Police Department. Listen, I did 2 years and 2 weeks and 6 days at TDC. I used to go to prison rodeos. I never dreamed I'd be one of these poor guys in there. I was in a car wreck. This lady was killed, and she was a wife of a high-ranking Harris County Deputy Sheriff, Vice President of Harris County Deputy Sheriff's Organization. And they put me in prison because of that, made me the bad guy because of it. My car didn't even touch hers, but I was the one that was like the culprit on record. So they broke it off in me. I could go on and on and tell you just exactly how corrupt that stuff that was all exposed. It happened in Abu Ghraib back in the original Iraq Gulf War, or not the original one,
Yeah.
the second one. Everybody got up and on. It happens right here. They hog-tied me. I slept like that, naked, just because this lady was killed in a car wreck and was married to a Harris County Deputy Sheriff. So when people get all appalled because of one thing that happens and they think, oh, it's one bad apple, no. I'm here to tell you it's not. It's an epidemic. It's gotten worse. That was 1997 when it happened, and it's gotten 100-fold since then. But like I said, I know y'all don't want to beat this story to death, but I just had to put my 2 cents. I call all the time. I'm the Richard that's always calling and bragging about my history degree. As soon as I got out in 2002, I went to college and I graduated in 2005. That's when I connected all the dots. My major was history. My minor was political science. I know a little bit
Well,
about
we appreciate your call. We're going to have to leave
Thank
it there,
you,
sir.
Richard.
Thank you so much. Is there somebody else, real quick? Anybody want to chime in real quick?
We got less than a minute.
Hey, what's this program? What's the show called?
Free Thinker Radio.
Free Thinker Radio. We're here every
Is
Friday.
it called Conspiracy Thinker Radio?
Nope, Free Thinker Radio.
Okay.
We're open to discussion on all kinds of things. But if you want to prove anything that we said is a conspiracy,
Yeah.
you're welcome
How
to
about
email
this?
us.
2 or 3 weeks ago, you talked about the group called the Finders.
Yep.
And you said everything about that was true.
Yeah, I produced a documentary about the Finders.
Guess
If you'd
what?
like to talk about it,
I
we
read
got less
about
than
it.
30 seconds
I
on
went
air,
through
so
website
call.
after website after website, and basically it's about 24 misfits. The CIA had nothing to do.
We're gonna have to leave it there. Hey, caller, if you want to speak to me after the show, you can. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Stay tuned. Our buddy's up next. This has been Free Thinker Radio.
Afrotronic.
Till next week. Peace.
Changes to the Pacifica Foundation bylaws have been proposed and may now be found on the foundation.
All right, guys. Hey, thank you for that. I don't know if y'all guys heard that call at the end.
Conspiracy Thinker Radio.
This guy just called us Conspiracy Thinker Radio, and he was starting to go on saying that the finders were a bunch of misfits and it was all just a misunderstanding. Anybody who's, especially you YouTube viewers, you guys have seen the documentary and you've seen all my reports. Everything is sourced and backed up with the documents from the police. Everything we talk about, we use mainstream sources, and we kind of make it clear when we're like stepping into speculative,
Getting our own
like
reflection.
yeah,
what we
like our
think.
thoughts or opinions. So yeah, what do you think, Micah? How about today's show? I want to get Johnny to come say hi to everybody real quick.
Yeah, today's show is fast. It happens on the FM side. It's always very fast. Thank you, everybody who did comment. I know we didn't get into as many comments as we do on the HD side. We're happy to introduce you to Johnny, our producer here, who really helps us to step up the game on the FM side. And we've got a lot more coming. So have you enjoyed being over here with us for a little bit?
I have enjoyed it.
So what's it like to
Where's
be
the
on the
camera? I don't know
right
where
there?
to look. Oh,
Right
hi.
there. Yeah, there you are.
Yeah,
There it is.
I'm looking at my own picture. No, this has been a great experience, and it's an awesome way for me to be a part of some activism and getting word out of different things, as well as, you know, I'm very motivated with music and
Well, you bring
promoting
so much.
local stuff.
You bring so much
So-
to the table. We're really glad to have another crew member here with us. And thanks to everybody who does comment, share, like, thumbs up, dislike the videos, because really the reason we do this isn't for pay. Nobody here gets paid. We've done it for a decade now to get the music out, the ideas out, to talk about these things. And yeah, occasionally people say we're crazy, and occasionally people thank us for doing this. I guess that's what happens when you talk about the stuff that's not
That's what
always
happens-
being talked about in the
What
lamestream.
happens when you're trying to think about something? You know, you might say something that's too far. You might learn something from someone with opposing views. That's always my favorite part about the show, is all the callers and all the different viewpoints we get, because you're never gonna learn anything new if you're just talking to people on the same team, or
Yeah.
quote unquote team. It's not
Yeah.
really the best word, but you get what I'm getting at.
For sure, for sure. And I do think it's important we look at the news from diverse places and we do some analysis, because as the story goes on, I guess some of these people that are pundits or whatever, they're just saying what they get off the wire. They're not doing a lot of reflection on it. So, you know, we sometimes do use what we find out there, but it's cumulative. We stay after these stories. We think they're important, and we discover inconsistencies in different media outlets. And, you know, I think this is important. And some people could say it's a conspiracy to even talk about that, but I think it's important. Conspiracies exist. And I mean,
That's always drove me crazy, dude. I think that it's hilarious that some people don't think that, you know, wealthy, powerful people, or even, you know, poor people could
yeah,
possibly meet up and talk about how they might continue to consolidate that power and wealth.
I think we work
In
really
secret.
hard.
I mean, I don't
for
know.
sure. I
Like,
think
it's
we work
happening.
really hard not to speculate as to what's happening, but to say there's questions here. You know, we want to think about this. I don't think often do we come in and say, oh yeah, this is happening, and make a claim to the
Yeah.
knowledge that, you know, one of these conspiracy theories is the case.
It's like, this is the information we have. Do what you will with it.
I would say, as far as the finders, just for me personally, anytime if I do say like, hey, we know for sure, it's because I know. Like, you know, it's because I wouldn't talk about something like that, and I wish we had more time with that caller, because
Yeah, I know. I hope he calls next week.
everything, and again, those who are on YouTube have seen the documentary. All the sources are available with the links to the police records. In fact, the FBI, you guys know, they just released records a couple of months ago that show even further that the police department said that the CIA and the FCI helped cover up this case of the finders. And I interviewed members of the finders. So hopefully that guy will call back in. And
One last
He
thing.
was mad.
One last thing I'd like to say about that is, when we're just dealing with news that is exploding and happening today, and we're being told about it, and we're reading about it from a few different sources, we don't know everything about all of it already. For example, when the total raid first started, we really didn't know anything about the misinformation. There were inconsistencies that were already showing up
We
in
just
day
said
one.
this stinks.
Yeah, we just started talking about things that didn't make sense and asking questions about why did the authorities have to go on TV and make such a big stink about it, and, you know, those sort of things. And some people might say, well, you're just looking for problems. Well, sometimes there are problems. And I guess in a free country with a radio for peace and the ability to talk about it, maybe we can head off some things. I really believe that there's a number of stories, whether we're talking about the TSA on the Houston Metro or the tunnels, that if we didn't speak about before we knew every single aspect of it, we wouldn't have made any headway towards making both our community a little bit safer, better place, and resisting tyranny.
Yeah. That it's just kind of ticking in my head now that I'm like reflecting on it about how mad that guy was about the finders. It's like, why are you rushing to defend potential pedophiles so hard before we have all that info? I'm really interested to hear what he had to say.
I think I recognized his voice.
A couple people call every once in a while and tell us.
Some people call angry and they just want to sound angry.
No,
so this is fine.
Here.
Yeah, that guy Johnny called, and
we got 1 second. Yeah, 1 second.
Some information.
We got a caller. She's looking for information about the psychedelics. So let me get her email. We got a pen or something. If you don't mind, I can take your email and phone number, and I can send you the details. I don't have it right in front of me, but we did get the doctor's email information and his phone number.
We're going to get more technology so we can live stream on more platforms.
It's in Houston.
So thanks everybody that does help by sharing these things. I know I mention it all the time, but it means the world. When we see that someone has shared one of these videos or commented on it, sometimes we like to read the comments because they're thought-provoking. But it shows that we're reaching more than just ourselves. The dialogue's more than just our ideas. And thank you for being part of it, because otherwise it'd be Derek's all right and Johnny's cool, but us three hanging out wouldn't be enough for us. Okay, cool. So thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing the time with KPFT and the Conscious Resistance. We expect to bring a lot more free stuff and
expect more improvements.
High tech.
We also had we forgot to give away. Somebody called, so this is who claimed it. She called at the end of the show and said, did y'all give it away or not? And I said, well, you're the only one that called in, so here you go.
Nice.
Awesome. I'm glad we gave it.
All right, guys, thank you so much for listening again. You met Johnny.
Monday.
Micah, and we'll see you guys on Monday. Till next time, you know what the deal is. Peace.